Afternoon, folks. Brian here, Geomagnetic Earthwatch on Tuesday, July 18, 2023 on the planet. Hope you're all well. So, folks, I'm going to be redoing a lot of my older videos on a number of subjects, but doing a different format. This one right here. So, I'm going to start off talking about solar flares, coronal mass ejections, and the effects on the human brain and our bodies. So as I redo all these videos, I'm going to try and keep them down to less than 30 minutes. There's quite a bit to go through and to understand. It's very important to understand the effects of cosmic radiation on our planet and its inhabitants. So I'm going to start off by saying that a solar flare is an intense localized burst or eruption of electromagnetic radiation which occurs from active regions on our sun. Now we can have a couple of other events. Filament eruptions, a filament of the gas whipping out into space, and coronal hole openings, which releases the solar winds. But for this talk, I just want to talk about solar flares. Now, a solar flare can last anywhere from minutes to hours. And in my last posting, there was a double peak into the upper M class. Some people seem to think that maybe it reached the X class. This was a long duration flare that lasted approximately 5 hours, folks. The impacts, if Earth directed, are more intense from a long duration flare as opposed to a short duration. To put it another way, let's just say a lower level X-class short burst only lasting a few minutes. An upper level M-class lasting for 5 hours will have even more of a detrimental effect on our planet. Anyway. Solar flares and CMEs, CME is short for coronal mass ejection, are quite different. And yet sometimes they're associated to one another. So the flare is the bright flash that we see. That is the bright flash that releases the radio wave and the light, whereas CMEs, coronal mass ejections, contain billions of tons of the highly charged particles of mostly protons and some electrons. And this is what's ejected from the flare outburst eruption. Now, most often, but not always, but most often CMEs are associated to flares, or that a flare will release a coronal mass ejection. Now, the intensity of the impact on the planet depends on whether it's direct Earth facing or just nicking us off the side. Now, the time for the radio wave from a flare to reach us travels at the speed of light. Therefore, it only takes 8 minutes to hit us. Whereas the plasma stream, the plasma cloud containing the billions of tons of highly charged particles, takes anywhere from 15 to 72 hours to reach us, depending on the space weather environment. And in what's coming next, the Cannibal CME, there were 2 blasts. So basically, the second one is going to be catching up to the first one. It's going to be kicking it in the button saying, get going, move faster. Cannibal CME. We'll see what happens soon. So I like to use this analogy. This is a very poor photocopy, sorry, of a discharge of a handgun. So the muzzle flash is the light that we see from the flare. This is the flare. This is the radio wave. This is what we see. This is what takes 8 minutes to reach us. The pistol is the sun. The gas discharge from the barrel of the pistol is the coronal mass ejection, containing that billions of tons of highly charged particles. Flash first takes 8 minutes to reach us. Coronal mass ejection takes 15 hours to 72 hours to reach us. So again, this can be blown off the side, away from Earth. We might catch the tail end of it, or it can be directly Earth facing. So once again, muzzle flash, the flare, the radio wave, being discharged from the flare or the unstable region is the gas propelling the bullet, the CME. So I hope you understood that one. Now, the highly charged particles, I'm going to back up a step. If that flare is strong enough, we can feel it. It can quite literally knock some of you people off your feet. I'll give you an example. On the Halloween of 2021, or the day prior, I don't remember the exact date. It was in the morning. An X-class flare hit us. I was with my wife in the bedroom. She's somewhat of a smaller person, maybe not all that strong. It quite literally knocked her almost to the floor. She placed herself against the wall to prevent herself from falling to the floor. So I helped her to the bed. Immediately I knew what happened. But first I checked her vitals to make sure she was okay. I knew what happened. So I went to my smartphone and I pulled up the Space Weather app, and sure enough, at that time, the amount of radiation that hit us, measured in the watts per meter square, was 9,373. It was much harder. It exceeded 10,000 watts per meter square radiation that hit us. And quite literally almost knocked my wife to the floor. That was a very, very low X-class flare. Now, if there's an associated CME inbound, that contains a different type of radiation. Those highly charged particles. That does have an effect on the human and animal brains, as well as other parts of our body. So I'm going to start off with the effects on our brain. Keep in mind, folks, our brain, I'm going to back up. So in my former life, I achieved my highest level of occupational first aid in the workplace, called OFA 3. But I wanted to know more about the body physiologically. So I did the equivalent of a pre-med study. My notes typed out was quite literally an inch thick in a binder. It's just notes. So I wanted to know more. Plus I have quite a bit of experience working in a hospital a few centuries ago. And anyway, I know a lot. So the effects on the, so the brain operates on electrical impulses, as well as chemical, but primarily electrical. So if you're going to introduce highly charged particles to the brain, it's going to react adversely in two ways, basically. First, neurologically, something that we can feel or sense, and neuropsychologically, making us go cuckoo. So let's start off with the neurological effects. The neurological effects can be headaches, Migraines, including those who normally don't get headaches and migraines. It can be frontal lobe compression. It could be spreading. It could be temporal stabbing, including those who have never had them before. You can have tiredness, fatigue, dizziness, vertigo, visual difficulties from increased ultraviolet radiation, insomnia, changes to your circadian rhythm, your sleeping clock, your biological clock. That's going to be a separate video. Now that has to do with the light spectrum, that our eyeballs will receive a certain level of light spectrum and transmit that information to the pineal gland of the brain, which is responsible for releasing melatonin, which causes us to get tired and go to sleep. That's a separate video. I'll try and find time to do that. So this is also very important to recognize. If you're in a hazardous job, maybe you work at heights. I used to. Construction. Maybe you work with dangerous machinery. Maybe you operate machinery. Maybe you drive. This is very important to recognize that when you're doing these type of jobs, when we have an inbound CME, recognize that you're going to have vertigo, dizziness, sudden stabbing pain in the head, headaches, migraines, dizziness. So those are the neurological effects. Now for the more devastating, for some people, the neuropsychological effects, what makes us go cuckoo. And I have a great deal of experience in this. So I have a 15-year-old autistic daughter. So I have a lot of management skills, as well as working in the hospital many, many years ago with all levels of psych care. So this can include, so there's going to be cognitive deficits or impairments. So your cognitive functions is your brain's ability to think, learn, problem solving, memory, as well as perception and decision making abilities. All these things can be affected, but many, many other things as well. And this is the more important thing to recognize, because they can really be destructive on the family unit, for example, your work life. The effect of cosmic radiation on the human brain can cause emotional instability, distress, irritable, mood swings, behavioral outbursts to acts of rage and violence, murder, thoughts of suicide, to carrying out those thoughts. The acts of suicide increase during geomagnetic storms. Anxiety, amplified depression, to psychosis, psychotic events. The most normal person can snap, intense rage, violence. So it is very, extremely important, folks, that you recognize that those ones in your family and friends, workplace, who already have mental health issues, ASD, autistic spectrum disorder, ADHD, any other mental health issue, schizophrenia, all this can be greatly amplified. So when we have geomagnetic storms, they're in 5 levels, from G1 to G5. G1, minor, G2, moderate, G3, strong, G4, extreme, and G5, the most dangerous. For some kids, when you reach G2 or higher, that can trigger them into psychotic rage, destructive, violent behavior. So it's important to realize these effects on those with these mental health issues, and understanding people. Understanding is one of the best things you can do for them and for yourself. In a situation like that, normally, one person and one person only in that person's environment. You start introducing more and more people, you are going to make them a lot worse. That is the standard management for people with autism, for example. One person, that's it. And even then, it might not help. So even for those of us with this knowledge at hand or in mind, it can be extremely challenging even keeping our own emotions in check while we're trying not to be a trigger ourselves and taking care of those with the pre-existing mental health issues I just described. To the point it can be debilitating. Please keep in mind that our protected magnetosphere is already down by 25%. To give you another analogy, if you used to watch the old Star Trek series. So when Captain Kirk says, "Shields up," and the shields go up around the Starship Enterprise, that shield is like our magnetosphere. But when we get hit with those CMEs, mostly protons, it weakens our shield. It compresses our shields the same way that Klingons fire photon torpedoes. One hit after another and another and another compresses those shields and weakens them until they break. Now, there's also some physiological effects. Your heart also operates off of electrical impulses, as well as chemical. Any people with any heart conditions, you have to make sure that you remain at complete rest. When you know there's an incoming geomagnetic storm coming, take care of them. Keep yourselves hydrated. Other things might be skin sensations, tingling of the skin, burning of the skin, increased UVC coming in. So now you're going to ask me, well, Brian, how do we protect ourselves? Well, first, knowledge. 2, keep up to date in space weather information. 3, studies have shown there are 3 materials that can protect us, shield us from cosmic rays and ultraviolet. These are 1, water, 2, concrete, and 3, polycarbonate panels. Hang on, see if I still have a piece. Yeah. So this is twin wall polycarbonate panels I use in all my greenhouses. Studies have shown that this material, plastic-based material, can deflect the cosmic rays and ultraviolet radiation. So when we know we're going to have a violent incoming geomagnetic storm, and you know it's going to affect you or your loved ones, obviously we can't be underwater. I believe the depth is between 6 and 12 feet. That'll provide us with shielding. Can't hold your breath that long. Concrete, however, if we know we're going to be hit with something big, and this is all part of your preparation plans, a multiple level concrete parkade. Seek shelter at the bottom level. Will provide some protection against the incoming cosmic rays. Or go to a nursery, go to a greenhouse, get underneath that polycarbonate panels. 19 minutes. So just briefly, some clothing that will help you to protect from the ultraviolet radiation coming in. Sea levels. unbleached cotton, for one. Any tightly woven material. Shiny polyesters and satiny silks reflect ultraviolet. Denim, tightly woven denim, are some of the materials that you can wear to protect yourself to a point. Like I said, our shields are already down by about 25%. So that's the effect on the human body, the brain. So it's almost 21 minutes. You know what? I'm going to go for another 8-9 minutes. The effect of cosmic rays, how they charge particles on our planet. I'm going to speak a little bit faster. So when a cosmic rays enters our atmosphere, it interacts with the atmospheric atoms, and changes take place, creating secondary showering particles we call muons. Those muons can and do penetrate the Earth's crust, and when reaching silica-rich magma, interacts with that magma and causes what's called bubble nucleation. Heat, pressure, rise, mantle plumes. Try and visualize a pot of thick Canadian pea soup on your stove. That's the magma below our feet. You slowly turn up the heat, such as the cosmic rays do cause, and that pea soup is going to slowly start bubbling up like the magma, boil over your pot. That's what cosmic rays does to silica-rich magma. And the upward pressure, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, fires. Now, the Japanese did a study on muons, the effect on Mount Pinatubo, the eruption in 1991, and how they excited the magma in the magma chamber in Mount Pinatubo. So whenever we have a bombardment of cosmic rays hitting us, we can expect an increase in earthquakes and volcanic eruptions through our weakened magnetosphere. And it doesn't just have to be from a coronal mass ejection, folks. You can have what's called a coronal hole opening in the sun, and that releases the solar winds, which contain the highly charged particles. You don't need a violent eruption, solar flare. Also, it's not just the sun we get the highly charged particles from. We also have the galactic cosmic rays, GCRs, cosmic radiation from the remnants of exploding stars. And I would suggest one more thing. Incoming cosmic radiation from a binary system coming within our orbital plane. So, knowledge at hand. I don't remember when we're going to be getting hit with this cannibal CME 18th, today or tomorrow. So again, yeah, buddy.
I'm gonna get dressed in Mama's room.
Okay, sweetie. See you later. Bye. My daughter. No video editing. Keep it all in there. So again, if you have loved ones, and especially children, who already have mental health issues, having this knowledge at hand is very important, and it will help you go a long way in planning your day for yourself as a caretaker, a parent, and in taking care of your children and anybody who has any cardiac conditions. All right. Try and plan your days for this incoming cannibal CME to staying indoors. Your house only provides you with minimal protection, but on the other hand, you don't want to be outside either. And our planet. And let's not trust what NASA and NOAA puts out on their sites for space weather. predictions. It's probably hard for them too as well, because again, our protective magnetosphere is down by at least 25% that we know of. And depending on the time of impact, I'll try and find that information later, and where the Earth is going to be at that time. Sun-facing impact, or are we going to be on the dark side? Again, we have a 5-hour-long duration M-class flare. So that's at least 5 hours of impact. I stand corrected. That happened yesterday. So something else is coming in from an event that happened before then. So much to keep on. Okay. So anyway, solar flares do affect us. Hope you enjoyed the talk. Later, Ray.